desert wind was dry and cruel, cutting across Eli Boone's face like a blade. He rode alone, his coat flapping behind him, dust rising under his horse's tired hooves. The sun was low, burning orange on the edge of the world. Most men would avoid Black Hollow Canyon at this hour, but Eli wasn't most men. He didn't come for gold or trouble. But trouble always found him anyway. A sharp cry broke the silence. He stopped, listening. At first he thought it was a coyote. But the second cry sounded too human, too weak, too scared. Eli turned his horse and rode toward the sound without hesitation. What he found froze him in the saddle there. Hanging upside down from a crooked wooden rig were 4 young girls. Their hands were tied, their faces pale. Their lips cracked from thirst, flies buzzed around their wounds, and the sand below was stained dark. Eli's heart pounded. Who would do something this evil? He leaped off his horse and rushed to them. One girl, barely conscious, opened her eyes. "Please, mister, help us," she whispered. Eli climbed the wooden structure and started cutting them down one by one. The ropes were tight, cutting into their skin, but he worked fast. The girls collapsed onto the sand, breathing hard, shivering in the heat. They were alive, but just barely. "Who did this?" he asked, kneeling beside the oldest girl, maybe 12. She shook her head and whispered, "Bad men, in uniforms. They left us here to die." Eli's eyes narrowed. Uniforms? Could it be bandits pretending to be lawmen? Or worse, real deputies turned into monsters? He looked up at the cliffs. Shadows moved quick, silent, watching. He grabbed his rifle and spun around, but no one was there. Just the wind and the rustling of distant trees. "We have to go now," Eli said, lifting one of the girls onto his horse. The others followed, weak and slow, but able to walk. He didn't ask more questions yet. He needed to get them to safety. His ranch was 2 miles out, hidden behind a dry creek and a grove of dying oaks. As they moved through the canyon, Eli kept one hand on his rifle. His gut told him they were being followed, and he always trusted his gut. At the ranch, he helped the girls into his old wooden house. He gave them water, wrapped their wounds, and boiled beans on the fire. They ate slowly, like animals, afraid the food would vanish. Only one girl spoke. Her name was June, and she wouldn't say much. Just 3 words. Again and again, they'll come back that night. As Eli checked the barn, something made him stop. A fresh boot print in the dust. He hadn't worn boots like that in years, and no one else should have been there. Suddenly, a sharp noise cracked through the air, wood splitting. The barn door burst into flames. Eli shouted and grabbed a bucket, throwing water as fast as he could. Smoke filled the air and his horses screamed in panic. He managed to put it out, but it was close, too close. On the side of the barn, someone had carved something deep into the wood. One word. Leave. Eli stood there for a long time, his jaw tight, his hands shaking. He knew what this meant. Whoever left those girls wanted them dead, and now they knew where he lived. But Eli Boone was no coward. He had fought bandits, rustlers, and worse. He looked back at the cabin where 4 scared girls huddled near the fire. He couldn't walk away, not now. As the stars blinked into the sky, Eli made a silent promise. He would protect them. He would find out who did this. And he would make sure they never hurt another soul again. Because even in the lawless Wild West, one good man could still make a difference. And Eli Boone was that man. The wind howled through the broken windows of Eli Boone's cabin that night. The 4 girls slept close together near the fire, their small bodies wrapped in blankets. But Eli did not sleep. He sat near the door, rifle across his lap, eyes scanning every shadow. His ears listened for the smallest sound, boots in the dirt, a creaking board, a whisper in the dark. He couldn't stop thinking about the word carved into his barn. Leave. But that wasn't going to happen. Not when someone had nearly murdered 4 children in the middle of the desert at dawn. The youngest girl woke up screaming. Eli rushed over, but she covered her head and whimpered, "Don't take me back, please." He gently touched her arm and whispered, "You're safe here." The girl peeked out with wide eyes, trembling. "I saw their faces," she said softly. "They wore silver stars like the sheriff, but they laughed when we cried." Eli's jaw tightened. She was saying what he feared: real lawmen had done this, or someone dressed like them. Either way, it meant danger deeper than just outlaws. The oldest girl, June, sat quietly, staring into the fire. When Eli asked where they came from, she pointed south. "There's a ranch," she whispered. "It looks normal from the outside. But they keep children in cages inside the barn." Eli felt sick. He'd heard rumors before about stolen children, missing girls, whispers of a group that sold people like cattle. But now it was real, right in front of him. He stood and walked out to the porch, breathing deeply. The air still smelled of smoke from the fire they had set in his barn. Suddenly, hoofbeats pounded down the road. He raised his rifle fast, but lowered it when he saw the rider. It was Jeremiah Flint, a tracker, ex-bounty hunter. And one of the few men Eli trusted. Jeremiah dismounted, his long coat dusty, his eyes sharp as ever. "Got your message," he said. He said it was urgent. Eli nodded. "You'll want to see this." Inside, Jeremiah knelt beside the girls, spoke gently, asked questions. When June described the cages and the men with the silver stars, Jeremiah's face turned pale. He stood and whispered to Eli, "I've heard this before. I thought it was just stories." Eli nodded slowly. "It's not." "Not anymore." Jeremiah reached into his coat and pulled out an old notebook. He flipped to a page filled with strange marks, names, dates, and a symbol. A broken eagle stamped beside each one. "I saw this brand years ago," he said. "It's the mark of the Black Ridge Syndicate." Eli frowned. "What do they want with children? Money," Jeremiah said, in silence. That night they planned to move the girls north to a safe place, an old church past the ridge where Eli once hid cattle from raiders. But just before dawn, Eli heard something, a creak, a breath. He grabbed his rifle and opened the back door quietly. A trail of small footprints led away from the cabin, into the woods. One girl was gone. June, Eli hissed. "Wake the others." He and Jeremiah followed the tracks fast, pushing through dry bushes and rocks. After 10 minutes, they found her tied to a tree, a cloth stuffed in her mouth. She was shaking, her eyes wide with fear. Eli untied her fast, but Jeremiah wasn't looking at the girl. He was staring at something beside the tree, a gold coin stuck in the bark. He pulled it free and turned it over, showing the same broken eagle symbol. "They were here," he said quietly. "Watching us." Eli carried the girl back to the cabin, heart pounding. They weren't just being hunted now, they were being tested. Whoever had taken her didn't want her dead. They wanted Eli to know they could reach her any time. That night, the fire in the cabin burned low, and no one slept. Even the girls could feel that something evil was out there, circling. June clutched Eli's hand and whispered, "It won't stop until we're all gone." Eli looked at Jeremiah, his voice low but strong. "Then we won't stop either, because the fight had just begun." And Eli Boone never backed down from a fight when innocent lives were on the line. The sky was still dark when Eli Boone tightened the saddle straps on his horse. The night felt heavier than usual, like something terrible was waiting just beyond the trees. Jeremiah Flint stepped beside him, quiet and alert, his hand never far from the pistol on his belt. Inside the cabin, the girls were still asleep, but Eli knew time was running out. The gold coin with the broken eagle had changed everything. It was proof real and cold that the Black Ridge Syndicate was here, watching them, playing with them like cats circling trapped mice. "We can't wait anymore," Eli said. "They know where we are, and they're warning us." Jeremiah nodded. "Let's follow the tracks from last night, see where they lead." They moved fast through the woods, rifles ready, every leaf and snap of a twig putting them on edge. After half a mile, they found more signs, hoofprints in the soft mud, and a broken branch with fresh blood, not human blood, horse blood, and it was still wet. Jeremiah crouched, examining the dirt, one rider wounded mount. Heading east toward the old Black Hollow trail, Eli's eyes narrowed. "Black Hollow's been abandoned for years." "Not anymore," Jeremiah replied. "Looks like the syndicate set up shop in the ruins." They followed the trail until the sun began to rise, turning the sky blood red. Then they saw it, a burned-out shack near the edge of a ridge. Smoke still curled from the ashes, and something shiny lay on the ground. A child's hair ribbon. Eli picked it up gently, his jaw tight. He looked at Jeremiah. "They were here." Jeremiah walked toward the rubble and stopped suddenly. "Eli, look at this." Buried halfway in the ashes was a scorched leather book. Jeremiah pulled it out, coughed at the smoke, and opened it slowly. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, names, dates, amounts of money, and beside each name, 2 marks, a red X or a circle. "What is this?" Eli asked. Jeremiah's voice was hard. "A transaction log, these names." "They're kids," he added, pointing, "bought, sold, or Worse, Eli's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just some outlaw gang. This was a full operation. Like a marketplace for human lives, one name caught Eli's eye: June, next to it. A price. In a red circle, his stomach dropped. She was already marked, he whispered. She was already paid for. Before they could speak again, a single rifle shot cracked through the trees. The bullet missed Eli by inches and tore into a tree behind him. They dove behind cover as more shots rang out from the ridge above. Ambush, Jeremiah shouted. They fired back, trying to find the shooters, but the attackers were hidden, moving fast. Dust flew, lead whistled, and bark exploded around them. After a long, tense minute, the shooting stopped. Silence returned. But it wasn't peace. It was the quiet of predators waiting to strike again. Jeremiah crawled over, bleeding from a graze on his shoulder. "Let's get out of here," he said through gritted teeth. "This was just a warning. They're not trying to kill us," Eli said, voice grim. "They want to scare us off, but they made a mistake," he added, standing slowly. "They think I scare easy." They rode back to the cabin fast, keeping off the trail. When they arrived, the door was wide open. Eli's heart stopped. He burst inside. Rifle ready, but the girls were safe, hiding under the floor trap like Eli had taught them. Only now they were crying, pointing to the table. Someone had been there. A knife was stabbed into the wooden table, and pinned beneath it was another message, carved into rough paper. "Next time, we take them all." Eli read it silently, then crumpled the note in his fist. He looked at Jeremiah, who was wrapping his bleeding arm. "We're not running," Eli said. "We take the fight to them now." Jeremiah gave a weak smile. About time, outside the wind picked up, and clouds gathered in the distance. It was going to rain soon, but Eli didn't care. He grabbed the ledger they had found, strapped on his holster, and handed June a small whistle. "If anything happens while we're gone, you blow this loud. Understand?" She nodded. Eyes wide but brave, Eli looked back one last time, then mounted his horse beside Jeremiah. They were heading straight into the lion's den, and this time, they weren't coming back empty-handed. Because now, they had names, they had proof, and soon. The syndicate would know they had made the wrong enemy. The sky turned dark like smoke as Eli Boone and Jeremiah Flint reached Widow's Ridge. The air was thick, the wind dry, and every sound seemed louder than usual. They chose this place for one reason. It was narrow and steep. Only a few men could ride through at once, and that gave them a chance. Eli had built a fence here years ago to keep cattle from falling. Now he turned it into a barricade, stacking barrels, wood planks, and stones. Jeremiah limped behind him, his arm bandaged tight, his eyes sharp despite the pain. "This ain't a ranch anymore," he said. "It's a war zone." Eli nodded, loading his rifle. "Right. Then let's make it count." Back at the cabin, the girls helped prepare quietly. June passed bullets to Jeremiah. The older girls filled canteens and packed food. Even the youngest, barely 6, tied rocks in pillowcases. They were scared but not helpless anymore. By noon, the ridge was ready. Traps were hidden beneath leaves and dust. Tripwires were stretched across the slope, and sharp stakes were buried deep. Then came the silence, the kind that presses on your chest. Waiting to be broken, Eli spotted the first rider just after sunset. A man in a dark coat, riding slow, a white cloth waving in his hand. He stopped just outside rifle range and shouted, "We ain't here to hurt anyone. Just give us what belongs to us." Eli stepped up, rifle in both hands. "You left 4 girls to die in the desert. That's all I need to know." The rider smirked. "Last chance, Boone. Bend him over and walk away breathing." Eli answered with a single shot. The man's hat flew off and he galloped back fast. Moments later, thunder rose not from the sky, but from hooves. Dozens of men charged forward. Rifles raised, shouting like wild dogs. The fight began. Eli fired from behind the barrels. Hitting the first horseman, Jeremiah took the second with a clean shot through the chest. Then came chaos bullets flying, smoke choking the air, metal clashing against wood. The traps worked. One horse tripped, throwing its rider into a pit of sharp stakes. Another stepped on a wire and triggered a blast from hidden powder, but they kept coming, wave after wave. Eli reloaded fast, shouting to Jeremiah, "Cover the right." Jeremiah grunted. Blood dripping from his side, they're trying to flank. Eli tossed him a fresh rifle, then crawled over the top to throw a lantern. Flames roared to life, cutting off the path behind them for a moment. The syndicate hesitated, pinned between fire and bullets, but then a voice rose from the back, a deep, commanding voice. "Move forward or die where you stand." Eli froze. He knew that voice. Sheriff Maddox, once a friend, now the puppet master of this nightmare, and he was here, leading them himself. The girls screamed from the cabin as a shot shattered a window. Eli cursed. "They're circling behind." He ran to the cabin, bullets snapping past him. Inside, the girls hid behind overturned tables. Trembling, "We'll hold them," he said. "Stay low, stay quiet." Outside, Maddox rode forward slowly, no longer hiding. His star badge glinted in the firelight, but it was stained with lies. "You could have stayed quiet." "Boone," he called, "now look what you've started." Eli stepped out, rifle raised. "The only thing I started is justice, a standoff. Two old friends turned enemies." Guns drawn, eyes locked, fire crackling between them. Then a sound cut through everything. One of the girls blew the whistle Eli gave her, a warning. Jeremiah shouted from the ridge, "They're coming from the side, 20 more." Eli turned, heart sinking. He wasn't just outnumbered, they were surrounded. Maddox smiled. "Say goodbye, rancher." But Eli wasn't done. He threw his last stick of dynamite toward the left hill and dove for cover. It exploded, shaking the ridge, throwing men and horses in every direction. The blast gave them a moment, just enough. Eli ran to Jeremiah, grabbed the wounded tracker, and helped him retreat toward the cabin. "Back door," Eli shouted. Through the creek, they slipped into the narrow escape tunnel behind the bar. Eli had dug it years ago during cattle wars. Now, it was their only chance. As they crawled through the dark, the sounds of gunfire faded. Smoke filled the night sky. The cabin was burning, but Eli didn't look back. Not yet. Not until he ended this once and for all, because Widow's Ridge had been a trap. But next time, Eli Boone would be the hunter. The flames ate everything Eli Boone owned. The cabin, the barn, the fence. Even the old oak, where his father once carved their family name, was all gone. Eli stood at the edge of the creek, soaked in sweat and ash, with his clothes torn, his hands shaking. The 4 girls cried behind him, huddled in the shadows. And Jeremiah Flint sat against a tree, bleeding badly. They had escaped, barely. The hidden tunnel had saved their lives, but it couldn't save their home. Eli watched the fire with hollow eyes. It wasn't just a fire, it was a message, loud and clear. You can't protect them. That's what Sheriff Maddox was saying. That's what the Blackridge Syndicate had written in smoke and ash. Jeremiah groaned and clutched his ribs. "They burned everything." Eli nodded. "They wanted to break us, but we're still breathing," he added quietly. "And that's their mistake." He looked at June, her face smudged with soot, but her eyes filled with silent strength. "They're going to keep coming," she whispered. Eli knelt beside her. "Not if we end it first." They moved under the cover of night, hiding in the old mining trails north of Widow's Ridge. Eli remembered a place, a collapsed silver mine with deep tunnels and an old shack above. It wasn't much, but it was hidden, and for now, it was all they had. As the girls slept, Eli studied the ledger again. The one they found near the burned shack. Each page listed names of children's sold names, marked with circles or X's. June's name was circled, but beside it was something new, a symbol, scratched in with fresh ink. A jagged line through a star. Eli stared at it, then flipped to the back page. There he found something he hadn't noticed before, a map. Hand-drawn, showing a trail through the hills leading to a marked building. "Supply Post 9, it read. Jeremiah leaned over, his voice rough. "That's not a supply post, it's their holding barn," he said. "Where they sort the children before transport." Eli's hands tightened around the paper. "Then that's where we end this." He left Jeremiah with the girls and rode alone toward the marked location. The ride was cold, the moon hidden behind clouds, and every rustle in the trees made Eli reach for his rifle. He wasn't scared, not for himself, but for the girls, for June, for the others who hadn't been saved yet. By dawn, he reached the edge of a clearing and saw it. A large wooden barn guarded by men with rifles. A supply wagon nearby, and a flag marked with the broken eagle. It was quiet, too quiet, and Eli knew this wasn't just a holding post, it was a hub, center for evil. He crawled through the brush until he was close enough to see inside. There were cages, real iron, cages lined with blankets and bowls of water. Inside them were children, silent, scared, some too weak to stand. Eli's heart pounded, but he didn't move yet. He counted guard 6 outside, to patrolling the roof and maybe more inside. Then he spotted something that made his blood run cold. A man stepped out of the barn. Tall, wide-shouldered, with a scar down his jaw and a silver ring on his finger, the same ring June had described. Luke and Crow, Eli, gritted his teeth. This wasn't just about burning a cabin or selling children. This was about power. Silence. And cruelty disguised as law as Crow gave orders to his men. Eli crawled back through the trees. He had seen enough. He had proof now, faces, locations, the full scale of the operation, back at the mine shack. He showed Jeremiah what he saw. The old tracker nodded. "We can't fight them head on. Then we'll expose them," Eli said. "The ledger, the map, everything, we take it to someone they fear." "But who?" Jeremiah asked. "Everyone in this territory works for Maddox." Eli's voice dropped low. "Then we go east, to Judge Heron. He's not owned by anyone, and if we get this to him, it'll burn Maddox and his syndicate to the ground." The plan was risky, and they only had one horse and a wounded man. But Eli didn't flinch. He looked at the girls who were watching him with wide eyes. He gave them a calm smile. "You stay hidden here, Jeremiah will keep you safe. And me?" June asked softly. "You've already survived the worst," Eli said gently. "Now, I'll make sure you never have to again," as he rode off with the ledger hidden under his coat. The wind rose behind him, and far behind, the barn where evil lived waited for a reckoning, because Eli Boone was coming, and this time, he wasn't bringing mercy. He was bringing truth and fire. Rain fell in slow, cold drops as Eli Boone rode through the eastern pass. His coat was soaked, his boots heavy with mud, but he didn't slow down. Every second mattered. The longer he waited, the more children would disappear into the Blackridge Syndicate's shadow. Behind him, the old silver mine hid for frightened girls. Jeremiah Flint stayed behind, injured but armed to protect them. Eli had given him the map, the ledger, and one final message. "If I don't come back, you take this to Judge Heron yourself." But Eli had no plan of dying, not yet. He rode through the night and reached the old telegraph station at Riverbend by morning. The place was quiet, too quiet. The clerk was gone, the door left open, papers scattered. Eli stepped inside, searching. Then he heard a sound, a soft gasp from behind the counter. He drew his revolver and rounded the desk. There, huddled in fear, was a little girl with tangled hair and bruised arms. She didn't scream, didn't cry, she just stared at him with wide, hollow eyes. He knelt slowly and said, "You're safe now," but she didn't respond. He tried again, softer this time. "Can you tell me your name?" The girl opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her lips moved, but her voice was gone. A scar ran across her neck, thin, cruel, recent. Eli's stomach turned. They had silenced her, whoever she was, whatever she saw. One made sure she couldn't speak of it. He wrapped her in his coat, gave her water, and carried her outside. But the moment they stepped into the open, she pointed toward the hills. She kept pointing, over and over, eyes filled with panic. Then she grabbed a stick and began drawing in the mud. Jeremiah had taught June how to do the same thing. When words were too dangerous, draw them. The girl scratched out a rough figure. A man with a scar on his face and a star on his chest beneath him. Stick figures in cages. Then she circled a symbol, a broken eagle with fire around it. Eli recognized the drawing, Luke and Crow, and the fire. It wasn't just about money anymore. Something big was coming. "They're planning to move the children," Eli whispered. He realized it now, the burning of his ranch, the attack on the ridge, the coin, the threats. They weren't just warnings, they were distractions. Crow was preparing a large transport, one final sale, maybe out of the territory completely. He turned to the girl and asked, "Where?" She tapped her finger near the trees, then motioned to the south. Eli stared into the foggy hills, his jaw tight. That was the old Glenroe train station. Abandoned years ago, now hidden behind brush and broken tracks, but the tracks still connected to the southern rail. If they moved the children from there, they'd vanish forever. He couldn't let that happen. He tied the girl gently to the horse's saddle with his coat. "Hold on tight," he said. "We're going back." They rode hard through the woods, past broken fences and wild streams. At the mine shack, Jeremiah stepped outside fast when he saw them. The girls rushed to help, and June froze when she saw the silent girl. She walked up, knelt, and took her hand. The two girls stared at each other like they knew what the other had felt. Then the silent girl nodded and pointed at the map again. June looked up at Eli, her voice low but sure. She's saying there's a train. Tomorrow night, Jeremiah groaned. We'll never get to Judge Heron in time. Eli's eyes narrowed. Then we don't go to Heron, we go to Glenroe. The cabin turned quiet. They all knew what that meant. No backup, no court, no protection, just one last fight. But Eli didn't flinch. He walked to the back wall and pulled out a box buried under dust. Inside was his father's old repeater rifle, polished, heavy, deadly. Tonight, we end it, he said. Jeremiah nodded, slowly strapping on a fresh bandage. The girls helped gather food, bullets, water, and matches. Even the silent girl helped quiet. But brave as the sun set, Eli looked out across the hills. He knew what waited on the other side: guns, greed, and a monster with a scar. But Eli Boone had something more. He had purpose. He had the truth. And he had 4 girls who had survived hell and still stood tall. And in the shadows of the Wild West, that was more powerful than any army. The moon hung low, half hidden behind black clouds. The wind howled through the broken pines as Eli Boone stared down at the Glenroe train station. He lay flat on the ridge with Jeremiah Flint beside him, the girls hidden behind rocks farther up. Below, torches flickered, wagons rolled in, and men barked orders like wolves gathering for a feast. Dozens of children, some in chains. Others in carts were being led into the cargo hold of an old train. The broken eagle symbol was painted on every crate, every flag, every rifle. And standing in the middle of it all like a king was Lucan Crow. He wore a black coat lined with silver, a scar across his jaw, and a cold grin on his face. Sheriff Maddox stood beside him, flipping a coin through his fingers like it was all just a game. Eli whispered. That's the last coin he flips. Jeremiah loaded his rifle, fingers trembling from blood loss. We ain't got numbers, he muttered, but we got fury. Eli nodded. That's all we ever needed. They had spent the last hours planting traps and oil-soaked barrels along the edge of the station. The plan was simple: strike fast, strike hard, and cause enough chaos to stop the train from leaving. Eli gave the signal one sharp whistle, then the night exploded. Barrels burst into fire, horses screamed, guards shouted, and bullets cut through the air like lightning. Eli moved like a shadow, shooting 2 men before they even saw him. Jeremiah limped through the smoke, firing from cover, reloading without missing a beat. Guards scrambled, confused, looking for attackers in the darkness. One man reached for the train lever. But June, hiding in the rocks above, threw a stone that struck him right in the head. The silent girl blew the whistle again, louder this time, echoing like a ghost in the hills. It made the children look up, made them hope, made them run. Eli kicked down the side door of the train and shouted, "Get the kids out, inside!" 3 guards turned, but he took them down in seconds. Blood soaked the floor, but the children rushed past him, their chains dragging behind them. Jeremiah collapsed near the crates, breathing heavy. "Crow's not running," he gasped. "He's waiting for you." Eli walked out of the smoke like death himself, rifle lowered but eyes full of fire. Crow stood there, untouched, his coat flapping in the wind. Behind him, Maddox held June with a knife to her throat. "Drop your gun," Maddox hissed. Eli did, letting it fall to the dirt. Hands raised, Crow stepped forward, smiling. "You've been a thorn for too long, Boone. You ruined our business, burned our supply chain, scared off our buyers." Eli stared at him, silent. Crow pulled a revolver and aimed it at Eli's chest. Then June did something no one expected. She bit Maddox's arm hard, kicked his knee, and dropped to the ground. Eli moved fast, diving forward as the shot rang out. The bullet grazed his side, but his fist slammed into Crow's jaw. The fight was brutal. 2 men throwing punches in the dust and fire. Crow reached for his gun again. But Eli tackled him into the flames. Maddox ran, bleeding, crawling toward a horse only to meet Jeremiah's last bullet. Straight through the heart, Crow screamed as fire caught his coat. He rolled, coughing, reaching for a knife. Eli stepped forward and kicked it away. "You don't deserve a quick death," Eli said coldly. The law came at Don Real Marshals. Brought in by a telegram Jeremiah had secretly sent before the siege, Judge Heron himself arrived later. His face pale after reading the ledger Eli handed him. The syndicate was over, its leaders dead or in chains. The children were freed, and the train never ran again. Eli stood outside the smoldering ruins, the girls at his side. Jeremiah leaned on a cane now, but he smiled for the first time in weeks. "You did it?" he said. Eli looked at June, then at the silent girl. They weren't victims anymore, they were survivors. Stronger than the men who tried to break them. Though Black Hollow would never fully forget its sins, it would now be remembered for something else. The night a stranger stood alone. It lit a fire no evil could escape. Weeks passed since the fire at Black Hollow. The smoke was gone, the blood washed away by rain, and the earth began to breathe again. But for Eli Boone, the scars ran deeper than any wound. He stood on the porch of a new cabin, smaller than the last one, quieter but warm. The sound of laughter drifted from inside. The girls, June, Lila, Mara, and the silent one, now called Hope, were playing cards with Jeremiah Flint. Jeremiah still walked with a limp, but his spirit had returned stronger than ever. The man who once hunted outlaws now taught little girls how to whistle and make rabbit traps. Hope sat beside him, her hand resting on his arm. She didn't speak, not with words, but her eyes told stories. She had started drawing again flowers, birds, even the fire ant once. She drew a man with a rifle and a wide-brimmed hat. It looked a lot like Eli. Eli stepped inside and set a bag of apples on the table. The girls rushed to grab them, laughing, fighting over the biggest one. For a moment, the world felt normal, like it had always been this way, but it hadn't. They had lived through pain, through horror, through fire. They had been hunted, sold, nearly forgotten. But now they lived. June looked up at Eli with eyes no longer afraid. She asked, "Will we always stay here?" Eli sat down, wiped sweat from his brow and smiled. "You'll stay as long as you want," he said. "This is your home now." Jeremiah poured coffee into a chipped mug and added, "Ain't no one taking you girls from this land again." Hope smiled and nodded, then reached into her sketchbook. She held up a new drawing, a big heart with all their names inside. Including Eli and Jeremiah. Eli felt a lump in his throat, but said nothing, just patted her head gently. Outside, the wind rustled the dry grass. A wagon rolled up. Carrying a man in a dark coat with gold buttons, Judge Heron stepped down and tipped his hat. "Boone," he said, "we brought papers." He handed Eli a packet, documents stamped with the seal of the territory. Official protection orders for the girls, signed adoptions, and warrants for the remaining syndicate members. "It's over," the judge said. "Blackridge is dead." Eli nodded. "Good." But the judge wasn't done. "There's talk in the Capitol," he added. "They want to give you a medal." Eli shook his head. "Keep it." He looked at the girls, now curled on the floor with blankets and apples. "I already got what matters," the judge smiled, tipped his hat again, and left without argument. He understood. Some men wanted medals, others wanted peace. That night, a fire burned in the new fireplace. Jeremiah played a slow tune on a rusty harmonica, and the girls hummed along. Outside, stars filled the sky, peaceful, endless, clean. June leaned against Eli and asked, "Do you think they're still out there?" Eli didn't answer right away. He stared into the flames, thinking of Maddox's smirk. "Crow screams, the way the night burned. They're always out there," he said softly. "Men like them, hiding behind golden badges. But as long as there are folks like us," he added, "they won't win." The fire cracked, and the girls slowly drifted to sleep. Hope leaned against Jeremiah, her sketchbook open on her lap. The last page had a single drawing, a tall man on a horse, riding away. But behind him stood 4 girls smiling in the light. Eli closed his eyes. He knew this wasn't the end. There would always be another trail. Another fight, another child in danger. But for now, just for now, he could rest. Because the girls were safe. Because they laughed again. Because they lived. And in the Wild West, that was a miracle worth more than gold.